All right. Welcome everyone to the 5 day reset. As everyone is joining us, we're going to give it a minute for everybody to be able to filter in. I would love for y'all to put in the chat where you are logging in from. That would be fantastic so that we can see just how far and wide the fasting method's tendrils roam. That would be great. Okay, and while everyone is filtering in, we will go ahead and get started by introducing ourselves. So, Amy, you want to go ahead and get started with introductions?
Yeah, well, I just want to say hello to everyone, and I'm just so glad that you're all here. And whether you're right in the middle of or end of day two of the fasting reset, or just getting started, or even if you're just here learning about the reset and you haven't started yet, this is a powerful place to just pause and to support your metabolism. Today, we're going to be focusing on what's happening in your body as insulin lowers and how to move through sort of this phase day two in a way that feels steady. That's one of my favorite words, steady and doable. And I am Amy Medling. I'm a national board certified health coach. I specialize in women's hormonal and metabolic health, especially in midlife. And I love to focus on helping women find a sustainable rhythm with fasting and eating that supports their body and their nervous system.
Awesome. Yes. And I want to echo that for everyone that's here that may or may not be engaging in this fast, that may or may not be at what I consider the hardest part of the fast, which is the second day witching hour. So off screen are my fasting fluids that I have been chugging. So if you too are in the witching hour, this is a great time to distract yourself from that. And, that's when kind of at that hour 48, depending on where you are in the world, right? You can really start to dig deep, right? This is that turning point where we are really kind of going deep into the woods of fasting. So my name is Coach Heather Shooker. I am a nurse practitioner by training. I came to the fasting method as a client. Coach Terry was my coach. I still consider her my coach, if I'm being really honest. I came to the fasting method specifically to find a coach because during my training for my nursing doctorate, I learned that the gold standard for weight loss intervention is intensive lifestyle intervention. And so what that means is people that are trying to lose weight do remarkably better with help than doing it by themselves. Evidence indicates. So whether that be with a coach, whether that be with a healthcare provider, et cetera, frequently meeting with someone to hold you accountable and support you through that journey is what the evidence indicates based on my studies and in my program that is the most effective way. So as someone who was obese as she was going through her program, I'm like, well, gosh, golly, Heather, you're learning that the best way to lose weight is to get help. And here you are, helpless with no help. At that time, I had been trying to fast on my own. I tried for 2 years to fast on my own. I had some early success and then I floundered all over the place. And then I joined the fasting method, like I said, with the intent to get a coach, got one. But of course, Terry's not just sitting there waiting for me as the day I sign up. So I started with the community. I got benefit immediately, started, realizing my mistakes, fasting immediately. And then I continued my therapeutic fasting with the help of a coach for the first 6 months. I lost 55 pounds in that time. And then I got to a healthy body weight, but I actually kept coaching because I was concerned about regain. Unfortunately, losing the weight is part of the battle. And then we got to worry about regaining it at the other side. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to have to bring in that. But that was also part of the evidence that I learned. And so I wanted to make sure that I continued to be supported through my maintenance so that I didn't fall off the wagon and gain it all back, which is, of course, unfortunately, a very common story for people. I'm guessing many of you have been through the issue where you've lost the weight only to put it back on. So we don't like to go out like that. That's why this community exists, so that it is here to support you. And I certainly received that support. I benefited from it. And when I went back, to my regular life as a nurse practitioner, I realized that I really wanted to spread the good word of intermittent fasting, and I found it very difficult in the medical model. And so I decided to become a coach, and Coach Terry saw that I was trying to become a coach, recruited me on into the fasting method, and here I stand before you, loving my life. So it is literally a passion project and a dream come true for me. So that is who you are dealing with today in this 5-day reset session. But today's topic, right? Now that you know us, today's topic is, kind of looking at the low insulin diet. So, Amy, do you want to get us started with talking about what that even means? What does a low insulin diet constitute?
Well, I think I want to just maybe start with a little bit of a reset check-in and kind of tie that to what's going on with low insulin. So if you are on day two of this fasting reset, I think this is often a transition day, and it can feel a little bit harder before it starts to feel easier. And that's often a really good sign that your body is beginning to shift. And in the last couple of days, if they have not been perfect, I just want you to know that that is okay. We do not, this is key to hear tonight. We do not need perfection to lower insulin. And if things didn't go exactly perfect today, if you may have slipped on your fasting aids, don't let, I call it a wobble, turn into a story that, one little wobble doesn't turn into, I can't do this. And every time you come back to your plan, to this reset plan, you are lowering insulin and you are rebuilding trust in your body. So, and we encourage you to post in Q&A. Tonight, we're going to be answering some questions after we talk a little bit more about lowering insulin and talk to our special guest. But we will answer, your questions and do some troubleshooting as well for day two of the fasting reset.
Thank you, Amy. I forgot about that part that we were supposed to be like, hey, by the way, you're fasting. Let's talk about it. Okay.
Yeah, but just in a nutshell, I think I would say that insulin, we don't have to really complicate it too much. Insulin is a storage hormone. And if you've been reading the Hunger Code, Dr. Fung really emphasizes that it's a storage hormone. And when it's high, the body is in storage mode. And when it comes down, the body can access that stored energy. And insulin goes up most when we eat, especially with refined carbs and frequent snacking. So what we're doing here in this 5-day reset, we're reducing those refined carbs and we're reducing that frequent snacking. So that will help you naturally bring insulin down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes, those of us who have been on the weight loss journey for a really long time can, kind of feel like, what am I doing wrong? Right? Why am I eating things that I know are problematic? When I know, it's not like we don't know that certain foods are going to put weight on us, right? So, certain treats and cookies, candies, cakes, and things like that, are absolutely, we know that they are not great for weight loss, but we still feel compelled to eat them, and we can't seem to stop ourselves sometimes. And that's because not only is insulin, a hormone that is responsible for fat storage, it also drives our desire to have more carbohydrates and to be hungry. So when we eat those, insulinogenic foods, when we eat foods that trigger insulin and fat storage, we're also putting ourselves in a downward spiral where it begets more, where we want to eat more of those foods. And so once we understand the science behind why we put the weight on in the first place, which is usually too much of those refined carbohydrates, like Amy mentioned, and eating too frequently throughout the day, which also stimulates insulin release, that 1-2 punch of food frequency and what the food is made of can really put a lot of weight on a lot of people as we've seen as a society. And so once we understand that, like once you look at fat gain in through the lens of, oh, I'm eating in such a way that's driving insulin high, then if I want this weight to come off, then I need to eat in such a way that pulls that insulin down, right? So the eating is one element of lowering insulin. There's also a few other things that we can do. So there are 5 levers of lowering insulin. Other than the food and the fasting, which we will certainly talk about. Here comes a thumbs up, is exercise, right? When we move our bodies, we are becoming more insulin sensitive because of the muscle that we're building, and we're actually burning the sugar as we move. Good sleep is important in lowering insulin because poor sleep leads to cortisol release, the stress hormone, which makes us more insulin resistant. And speaking of stress, managing our stress is important because high cortisol, high stress causes us to be more insulin resistant and exacerbates the problem. But the two, so we definitely talk a lot about those 3 as well. But the 2 specifically that, we talk about in the fasting method and that we really encourage people to do is, of course, fasting, because when we're not eating, we are absolutely allowing our insulin to come down through that process. And if you are kind of keeping up with this 5-day reset, your insulin should be pretty darn low here at, coming for me at hour 48. So that is way number 1 that we can lower our insulin. And way number 2 is to not eat foods that beget insulin, right? And so that would be sugars, and that would be highly processed refined grains, right? So your flours and your white rice and your corn, ground corn products, et cetera. So, kind of looking at the diet through the lens of how do I keep insulin down? Because ultimately, if it's up, I'm in fat storage. So if I want to burn the fat for fuel, it must come down so that the body will release it. Then I must eat in such a way that it's not driving insulin.
Yeah, and when insulin is lower, as you said, the body can shift from storing energy to actually using that. And what that means for you is that you're going to burn fat easier, but you're going to have more stable energy. You're going to notice that you don't need that that nap after lunch or that kind of low energy feeling. You will have more energy, and you will have clearer hunger signals. And that's something that Dr. Fung has been talking about throughout the hunger code. So insulin is one of the biggest levers to have clearer hunger signals and fewer cravings over time. So hopefully by 48 hours, you're starting to maybe feel a few of those wonderful side effects of lowering insulin.
Yeah. And if you're not having that clarity and that, stable energy, and you feel like you're dragging and you have mental fog and you're like, I don't know, I don't feel great. Almost always, friends, it is lack of salt that is putting you in that position. I cannot tell you how many people have, kind of not had the success that they were looking for with their fast. They went in with the best intention to have a long fast, and they felt compelled to break it early because they felt unwell. And of course, that is what we teach. We break if we feel unwell under any circumstances when it comes to fasting. So yes, we should break if we're feeling well, but let's be proactive about our hydration and our salt status so we don't find ourselves in that position. And the way that we do that is we make sure we're getting adequate salt. Now, one of the way that I make sure that I get salt is I use bone broth, right? And so, we've talked about the Era product that Dr. Fung, is selling, the company that is associated with the fasting method, and that is just a simple way to get salt in. before that company exists, I was using bone broth with my therapeutic fasting when I lost my weight. Now it's just so much more convenient than making my own. It's literally 2 tablespoons of powder, cup of hot water, and then I add between a quarter and a half a teaspoon of salt to it, and it's great. It's like a little soup in a cup. It takes minutes to prepare, and it's a way to get salt in. So I have at least two of those a day, and that meets my salt needs. So kind of the fasting reset elements that I know that last night Coach Terry and Coach Jill talked about, kind of choosing, at what level of using those fasting aids or fasting friends, as I like to call them. So, if you're using more kind of those, the soup and the vegetables, that's certainly a path to take. The path that I tend to take is more kind of bone broth central, and that's how I get my salt in. I also, when I'm salting, just have some, or when I'm fasting, just have a little salt shaker right next to me so I can just put that on my tongue. It really is an appetite suppressant, basically, because a lot of times we can mistake hunger for low sodium, or mistake low sodium for hunger. And so it's almost miraculous. You put the salt on your tongue and you realize it dissipates a little bit more quickly. So please do not kind of neglect that piece, especially for a longer fast like this, and make sure you're getting your sodium in. Recommended daily allowance of sodium is about 2 grams, about a teaspoon. So a teaspoon and a half is usually kind of on the low side, the minimum, to make sure that you get that supplementation in that will help you with the mental clarity and the energy levels, etc.
Yeah, so if you're right now kind of feeling that headaches, lightheadedness, I think I saw somebody in chat mentioning that fatigue or just sort of a little off, that may be a sign that you need more salt. And I do really enjoy the Era bone broth, and I did a community group meeting today about breaking your fast. And a lot of folks have a hard time with some even like a homemade bone broth because it has a high fat content. And when you're coming off of a fast or in a fast, that fat content in some bone broths can make you feel, cause a little digestive distress, but you don't have to worry about that too much with the Era protein. And it's a nice option for adding those electrolytes in, and just a really kind of clean bone broth. And we do have a coupon code for you today. So with the code HUNGER, code 20, you can get 20% off all of the Era products, including the teas, the fasting teas, and of course the bone broth.
Yes. Now, one of the other things that we wanted to talk about as far as the, kind of low insulin diet, and I want to point out we spoke specifically about kind of refined grains and sugars and things. There's of course like a spectrum, right? When it comes to how insulinogenic foods are in the carbohydrate family, and so foods like fatty things are very low, right on as far as inducing insulin. It's kind of dormant as far as how much insulin is released and how much your blood sugar goes up. But once you start to get into the neighborhood of even whole foods, healthy whole foods, and you start to see things like your legumes, your fruits, and kind of starchier vegetables, then there truly is kind of a range at how those foods are going to affect your blood sugar, and affect your insulin. And one of, a very common question that I get asked is, how low do these carbs need to go? How, where, what's the number? What's the magic number, Heather? And if there was a magic number for all of you, I would tell it to you. I would not hold that back. I would tell you right now. What we like to say at the fasting method is N equals 1. And the reason we say that is because when you do a science experiment, however many subjects are in the experiment is how many N's you have, right? So if there are 50 people in the study, N equals 50. But you, my friend, listening to me, are running your own experiment, and it's got one participant, and that is you. And what you must figure out is how these foods affect you and at what level of carbohydrates you can have. Now, if you're all the way over in the insulin resistance spectrum of type 2 diabetes and you got a real sugar problem, you probably shouldn't have too many carbohydrates, right? You should be low on the carbohydrate level. But if you are not that far, and maybe you're insulin resistant, as evidenced by your excess body fat, you might not need to go as extreme, but you also might notice, especially if you've been carrying that weight for a long time and you're getting up there 40, 50s, right? Like myself, then you might see that, wow, I'm doing fasting. I'm, trying to eat whole foods. But if you're including a lot of root vegetables and, the sweeter fruits like grapes and, mangoes and things, you might find that those are interfering with your weight loss. So it really is tough to, for us to have to inform you that sometimes even healthy whole foods that you've been told your whole life are good for you, they are in moderation and in smaller amounts. But when it comes to insulin resistance and trying to lower insulin, the dose does make the poison, like Dr. Fung says, and we really need to be very strategic about the carbs that we choose to eat and the quantities that we choose them in. And so kind of focusing in, especially if you have a lot of weight to lose, you're very insulin resistant, focusing on those above ground vegetables, kind of the whole, healthy proteins, healthy fats are really going to be, kind of where you want to concentrate your diet and be very cautious about the carbohydrates that you have, put them at the end of the meal so that you can benefit from meal timing, etc. So there is a range of carbohydrates that people can find themselves on for their weight loss needs. And you really just have to kind of play with it a little bit and see where you fall.
Yeah, there really is no one size fits all approach. I call it there a kind of a carb spectrum. There's, many sides of the spectrum. But Heather, I think just as important as what we eat, especially maintaining low insulin after this reset, is how often we eat.
Yeah.
So even low carb foods can keep insulin elevated if we're constantly snacking and eating throughout the day. So spacing meals really matters. And we really want those mini fasts between meals. So you have a meal and you stop eating, and then you have a period of time where you're not eating. You might have your fasting friends, like Heather likes to call, some I'm drinking my bubbly water. But then you give yourself, you give your body a break for that insulin to come down again after a meal. And that's, as important as keeping a low carb diet.
Yeah, yeah, we like to say time restricted eating is really the baseline magic. And so often I see people come to fasting. It's amazing, right? And they're seeing weight loss happen. It's the miracle that they've been looking for, which is how I describe it. But they neglect the piece that Amy just talked about, which is having those mini fasts, focusing on meals only. And so they don't really correct the behavior of snacking and grazing, which was part of the insulin problem, part of the weight gain problem that got them into the mess that they're trying to get out of. And then they find themselves getting close to goal and ready to transition from doing therapeutic fasting into maintenance. And they haven't practiced the skill of only eating at mealtime, and that can lead to regain and can lead to a lot of frustration. So I like to say that maintenance starts with the first pound loss. So we really need to start to transition ourselves into that maintenance mindset from the beginning and start to practice good time restricted eating. Not only is it important for when we're finished losing the weight, but life gets lifey at us, man, right? Stress comes for all of us. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And when it does, we need a holding pattern that is not going to be have us in regain. So, time restricted eating is where we, kind of settle in between fasts always. And it's never wrong to do that. It's always a good idea to practice that. And that requires us to only have food at meal times, even if it meets the macros, like, nuts and cheese and, healthy proteins and things. But it really does need to be something that we practice out of the gates. And honestly, sometimes people really should be practicing that before they turn up the fasting dial into one meal a day, overnight fasting, or these 5 days. So you really kind of have to meet yourself where you are. But that is definitely what you want to do next when you come out of a fast is to get yourself locked in on that time restricted eating. Okay, we have a special guest that is going to join us. Amy volunteered to distribute to figure out the technology behind getting our special guest onto this screen with us. So, special guest, if you are there, Amy is going to work some
Hi.
magic and make that happen. Oh, look how fast Amy was. She got it going almost immediately. All right, our special guest is Roland. She is a lovely lady. I know her personally. And Roland, welcome. Thank you for being here with us. And kind of the idea is for you to go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know your experience with the fasting method.
Hello, Heather and Amy. Hi, everyone. So, yes, my name is Roland. I'm from Ottawa, Canada, and I've been with the fasting method since September 8th with Heather, actually. Heather became my coach at that time. And I was at the end of my rope. She asked me, Heather, what was my goal, my first goal? And I said, I need energy. I was tired and hungry all the time. And I said, if I have energy, I will want to move. And then I will lose some weight. I thought I could lose 30 pounds and I would be very happy. So that was pretty much those were my hopes. As soon as I started fasting, I really enjoyed it. Like I had read Dr. Fung's book and Megan's books and the YouTube stuff, but I was alone. And when you think you understand things, and it was not the real thing always. But finally, with Heather, I got back on track, and I really enjoyed the fasting. In the beginning, I was a little too keen on fasting, so Heather had needed to put the brake with me, because I felt so good. So right away, within a few weeks, my energy got better, and I started going to the gym because I used to go to the gym, hate it, looked at the clock all the time, roll my eyes. It was so boring. So that was me 6 months ago, 6.5 months ago. After a while, I thought I need numbers. I wanted to measure if I was progressing because I thought it was working, but I needed numbers. So I call those my glimmers because it was, I didn't think I would lose more than 20 or 30 pounds, but I wanted to measure more things so it would make my process more positive because I needed more positive glimmers. So I got a continuous glucose monitor. I took Megan's class and I learned about that. I just got it for 3 months from Costco. So it gave me an idea when I was spiking and how I was, reacting to certain foods. And then I got some blood work done. I was not diabetic, but I knew with my abdominal fat and the way I was eating, I was probably heading there. But my big surprise was after in January, my second blood test, my inflammation markers that were sky high. I thought I was like a time bomb. I was really worried. They're normal. So that was my big surprise. Like I couldn't believe it. Energy. Now I go to the gym three times a week with a trainer. I have a trainer. I don't roll my eyes. So I guess TFM, you fix my eyes. I enjoy it. I have muscles. I thought I was a little too old to have muscles. So apparently not. So I have muscles and energy. Like I get up earlier than before. I go to bed later than before. So with all this time, I have a whole bunch of pastimes and passions that I care for. And mostly it's time for me because I used to be a nurse. I just retired a few years ago. And I had the best career ever. I took care of my family. So I did what I needed to do. But now I have time for myself. So it's really, really nice. So working with Heather and TFM, and like there's the coaches, like everybody, I like the live session, so I always get something like something that's brewing in my head, or I forgot something, or I need to connect the dots. And sometimes I feel like I have like 36 coaches online because one of them answers something because she went through it and I'm going through it. So I really enjoy the community. Um, what else? What else? What else? What else? Yeah, I needed help with I didn't understand the fasting. I was afraid to die. I used to go to bed with a little bit of nuts in my on my bedside. I had nuts in my car. I had nuts in my purse, and now I only have salt in my purse when I go out. So I don't have to carry all these things. That's about my story, I think.
Do you mind telling us about your weight loss for a long?
Oh, I forgot. See, my goal was energy. Weight loss now is like
Yeah,
with
that's
so many
nothing.
glimmers. I lost 63 pounds. I can't believe I'm leaving. Sometimes I have to check. I have my Renfo scale. I'm waiting for my DEXA scan next week because I want to see. I think I can do body recomposition, so I'd like to compare. So it's working. I thought I was done. I thought at 68, 67 years old, you're done. So yesterday was my birthday and I feel like I'm 34. That's how I feel. I forgot the weight loss. Yeah.
She
Well,
forgot,
Ramon,
y'all.
I
Just
forgot.
barely registered
Yeah,
because she
just
feels so good. And that's, that Coach Terry, I mean, my coach really kind of emphasizes that. And I've learned to really kind of switch my own focus. Because of course, when I came, all I cared about was weight loss. I was like, yeah, 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 I'll feel
I was
better.
too
Whatever. I want to
shy.
look better.
Yeah.
And
I didn't
then you
trust.
start to realize,
Yeah.
oh, wait, I didn't realize how bad I felt, first
Yes.
of all. And second
Yes.
of all, what a gift this energy and this transformation is, how
Yeah.
I look and that stuff is
Yeah.
just so secondary.
Exactly. And I'm getting older, and I was thinking, like, I know what's coming, and I'm fine with that. We have to age, with be proud, and like we had a good life, good careers and stuff. But now it's like exciting. It's amazing. Yeah.
I love it.
and Roman, I love that you said that the glimmers, and we
Yes.
sometimes call them at TFM non-scale wins because
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where so much of the progress is happening, especially
Yes.
early on.
Yes.
Um, so I said in the beginning of our webinar that one of my favorite words is kind of steady. And
Yes.
what helped you stay steady during the harder moments, especially early in your journey?
Uh, Participating in the group sessions. I tried very fast to learn everything, read everything, buy every book, but I couldn't catch up. And after a while, I just needed to, okay, slow down. Heather said, Roland, I was too eager and I was decreasing my potential. So, and then I said, okay, I need numbers. I can't believe I didn't believe in the beginning that I would lose that much weight. I thought I'd lose 20. I'm good at losing 15, 20. I've done it in the past and I'm good at gaining it back. But I didn't trust myself. So I had the mindset part, that was a big shocker for me. And after a while, I stopped participating in the live groups because I needed to process. I needed to think. I needed to read. The self-talk part was hitting me hard like during the holidays for a while. And then I thought, no, I need the community. So I came back. I was like always the first one online, like at quarter to the hour, because I get 75 coaches some of the sessions. So
Yeah.
you're not alone, and we lift each other. Somebody's having a rough. I don't. So yeah, the mindset and all those glimmers like I'm an adult. I'm full of the toolkit. I have tools I have never heard of before, and stuff like the magnesium and all those things. But we have so much power, and this body is a magic machine. You need to fuel it properly. It's amazing. We are amazing, but
Well,
together made a difference for me.
and I love that you shared about coming back to the community.
Yeah.
when you needed more support. I think having that steady place to come back to can make such a
It
difference.
is. Yeah.
And I think as coaches, that's what we see over and over again, that it's not about doing this perfectly. It's about having a
Yes.
place to come back to when things feel a little off.
Yes.
And that's what helps people stay consistent. It's not perfection, but the support. And we have that for you here at TFM.
It's true.
And that that perspective from the other members too along the way.
Everybody's wise. Everybody has their own journey, their own experience, and there's always something. When you turn off your computer after the hour, there's always something that lingers. Me, I'm a big thinker. I need to process, I need to ponder and think. And there's always somebody, even people I never met, I never saw, or new people or older, faster. There's always somebody. And the coaches, sometimes I write in the the comments in the chat. Are you reading my mind? You have a camera in my like you're talking exactly of something that I needed today. So I really get a lot from everybody, the community.
Roland, I had just what you described just now when I joined the community. And sometimes when we spend our lives, kind of isolated in, especially those of us who are a little older that maybe didn't have peers that, struggled with their weight. So I always felt like it was just me, just me. And then, there's a lot of shame, a lot of guilt associated with, carrying my obesity for so many years. And then, like you just described, I came into this community and I was like, oh, it's not just me. And I would hear person after person telling their story. And I'm like, that's my story.
Yeah.
That's my story. That's my story over
And
and over
you
again.
connect. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're like, I'm not alone. This isn't just me. I'm not broken. Right. And so not only do you see people that, have come from where you've come, you also see people a few steps ahead of you that
Yes.
came from where you became and then,
Mm.
use the fasting and the dietary changes and the mindset and habit change to reach goal. And you're like, well, gosh, their story's mine and they did it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, part of, faith is required, I think, to take, to take on something like this. And so I think part of that faith is really kind of bolstered when we see other people that match our story that have done it. And we're like, okay, I've never done it before. I feel broken, but she had the same exact story as me and she did it. And she keeps telling me she's not special. So maybe I can too.
Yeah.
And that's all you need, that you need that hope and that faith to take it on and to push through some of these fasts where it's a little uncomfortable and to just believe that we are not leading you astray. We have people like Laurelon, like myself, and so many others that have met their goal, had their transformation because they believed in it. And that's why, I used to say I was going to stand on the roof or on the street corner with a sandwich board and a bullhorn and just yell about how great fasting was. I didn't have to do that. Instead, I went on social media and got loud. And here I am. And so, my whole goal is to pay it forward, and I hope, Roland, as a healthcare person, that you also are being the change
Oh
that
my
you wish
God.
to see in the world by living by example.
I'm doing it in a passive way because my family sees my change, my energy, and we went for dinner with my son and his new wife in the fall, and my son said, "Mama, tell me about magnesium again." So, like things like that. So it's really nice. And my little grandson, he just turned 7, and he told me in the holidays, he said, "Grandmama, are you old?" Because I have silver hair, or are you young because so I got them all mixed up. So I'm having fun. We have to lead by example. I'm not carrying no a presentation or some stuff, but you know what? We lead by example, and I think that's the best way with our hearts
Mm.
Mm,
and our
exactly.
sparkles. Yeah.
You are such a delight. I'm
Oh
so
well,
grateful for
thank you. You gave me my sparkle back. That's all I wanted, and thank you.
it.
I have nothing but nice things to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
that,
coming. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
And Amy's going to find a way to put you back in with.
I
Okay.
think it's just it. Thank you, Roland. I think it's just so meaningful for everyone to hear what this looks like in real life, living this lifestyle. And
It's
you
a journey and we have control. So there's so much and there's so many things I still have to learn. Like I'm starting my maintenance this week. So it's a new, but I'm excited. I'm not scared and I'm positive and full of new glimmers coming up.
yeah.
Merci,
Well,
Amy.
well, thank you so much. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Roland. And now we will get to the Q's and A's. Um, this is always a little hard, you guys. There's a lot of questions in here. So we'll come through and see what we can answer. And I don't have my glasses on, Amy, and it's a little blurry.
Oh gosh.
Okay.
Let's see. So,
Oh, I'll tackle this question about autophagy. Worried about the steamed breast vegetables and things, and bone broth kicking her out of ketosis and autophagy. Those are two separate things. And so ketosis is a metabolic state, right? So ketosis is when our body, has switched over from sugar metabolism to fat metabolism. It's making ketones and using those for fuel because our glucose has dropped down and our body has a mechanism of you first using up all the storage, right? And so that's one of the things that happens as we're fasting is we start to burn through the glycogen stores in our liver, which is basically stored sugar in our liver. And it's like once we burn through that, and if we are in the habit of eating a, kind of a high fat, low carb diet, then ketosis is something that we transition to very easily. So that is something that we tend to get kicked out of if we're eating carbohydrates, right? So if we're adding more sugar to the system, then our body doesn't need to use ketones anymore. It will switch to sugar metabolism and that'll knock you out. So using the fasting friends recommended in the reset shouldn't kick you out of ketosis because they're very low carb, right? Those above ground vegetables are not very carby and certainly shouldn't be enough to kick you out of ketosis. Um, Depending on how precariously you are in ketosis, right? We can be in different, deeper stages of ketosis. Autophagy is a little bit different. So autophagy is a process of kind of cellular like recycling, right? It's kind of like the roto-rooter. That is something that our bodies do outside of fasting. So, it is just a regular mechanism that our body does. It can be intensified with a ketogenic diet. It can be intensified with exercise, but boy, can it be intensified with fasting, especially deeper, longer, extended fasting. And so it's a fair question. If I am fasting for autophagy, doesn't eating, right, having caloric things break that? Well, autophagy is not, the coach Lisa, one of our coaches, described it less like an on-off switch and more like a dimmer switch. And so as we fast and deepen into autophagy, right, it really starts to deepen at hour 24 and then gets deeper and deeper and kind of peaks at 72. Still happens past 72, but that's about where it peaks. So, that deepening does get stronger, without, adding in things, especially protein things, right? Amino acids really do start to kick us out of that deeper autophagy. But it's not like it turns it all the way off, right? It's not like you're in hour 48, you have some bone broth and your autophagy is turned off. It just dims it down a little bit. That gets processed and then it starts to intensify again. So I think the key thing to remember with these 5-day resets is and using these fasting friends as needed to help facilitate that is to remember that there are a whole lot of benefits even with the fasting friends, even with the aids, even with these calories in that fasting mimicking stage that would be left on the table for someone that cannot tolerate that intensity of fasting without using them. So those fasting aids can be a really good bridge into these health benefits that would otherwise be unavailable because doing it water only is just too intense for some people. So meeting your intensity where you are is a good idea. So if you don't need to use those, you certainly don't have to, right? You can pick and choose at what level of fasting aids that you're going to use or not use based on your fasting muscle experience and how your body is telling you it feels with it.
well, I have a fun question here. First of all, well, this is from an anonymous attendee, but she starts off, "You two are a dream team, peace and fun." Who's peace and who's fun?
I'll take
What
either.
but her question is, some people say keto killed my thyroid. Are carbs essential for thyroid health for perimenopausal women? Should we have low carb yet non-zero carb way of eating as perimenopause women? So I think that's such a thoughtful question and one that we hear a lot, especially from women in perimenopause and beyond. If you are a member of the fasting method community, you can attend some of our women's hormone meetings. And this is a topic that we talk a lot about. I don't think it's so much that keto kills the thyroid. It's that in some cases, very low carb combined with life as a midlife woman, high stress, kind of chronic restriction, over fasting, poor sleep, under eating, all of that can greatly impact how the thyroid functions. It's just the thyroid is very sensitive to overall energy and availability and stress, not just carbs. So, carbs, I guess that you could say they're not essential in a strict sense, but for many women, especially in perimenopause, having some carbs can feel really supportive. So fibrous vegetables, Heather talked about kind of the above ground vegetables can be a very supportive carbs, and then depending on the person, maybe some berries or, after your protein and fat, maybe some type of a starch depending on the person, but that's something that we could work on in a coaching relationship, really dialing in what amount of carbs, is right for you, or, tuning into. Actually, tomorrow at noon at the Fasting Method, I'm doing a Carb Cycling 101 group meeting. So we would be talking about kind of how to bring in some carbohydrates for midlife women. But great question. Thank you.
Very good question. Very, a common, like Amy said, common. Another common question I see here is hair loss. Hair loss with doing the extended fast, or well, 42, 48. So, ADF versus extended fast. And, hair loss can come from a number of different places. And we shouldn't always assume it's because of this, right? Getting your thyroid checked, right? Speaking of thyroids, when we experience hair loss, it really is a good idea to get a baseline set of labs and certainly have that investigated, especially if we're midlife women and older. So I just want to throw that part out there. So hair loss is not always about this. It could be about that. But if it is related to fasting and weight loss, one of the things that can and does happen with rapid weight loss is thinning of the hair. It is quite common. It happened to me, and there's we see that a lot in the bariatric community when people have a bariatric surgery and they lose weight quickly. They have the thinning of the hair, and just as the bariatric surgeon might counsel their patients, I would counsel my clients that being very protein forward is certainly going to help with that, right? That kind of lack of protein is part of the issue there. But sometimes just the rapid weight loss is the issue. And so sometimes there's a trade that we're making when we choose to do something like therapeutic fasting. Like, much like Roland, who lost weight very quickly, I did too. I lost 55 pounds in 6 months. And in that time frame, like that's a lot of weight very consistently. And, toward the end, right? Like, I certainly, kind of could see that there was an impact of that rapid weight loss. And so, it's funny to me as a weight loss coach, but people are like, I want this weight off yesterday. How long have you been struggling with it? 40 years. And now I'm done. I want it gone. And that's common. They want it as fast as possible, but they don't want to pay the piper, right? They don't want the consequences of fast weight loss. And so sometimes it's a trade that you get to make for yourself. Yes, rapid weight loss might come with a little bit of thinning of the hair, which resolves, right? I got plenty of hair now. So it's a matter of, this might be a therapeutic phase in your life. So you might have that side effect. And then, if you're willing to accept it and get the weight off quickly, and then, which no guarantees, obviously, but if that is the case for you, then okay, now we're back into nourish mode, full time as opposed to alternating days. And in that time frame, hopefully you can start to kind of replenish, some of the nutrients that you may have missed along the way. Certainly, kind of replenish the protein. And as your body is, kind of trust you again that you're not in a famine, it will go back to those, rapidly producing cells like, your hair cells, so that you'll see the hair regrowth. So, and that's the case with a lot of the side effects when it comes to intermittent fasting, because there are some, right? We can have some GI distress when we refeed after a fast, right? People get diarrhea. Some people experience headaches. Some people experience coldness. Some people experience disruption in their sleep. They're a little wired and find sleeping difficult. Many of these resolve over time. Some of them stay a little problematic. And so, we, certainly have lots of ways that we talk about resolving some of those side effects, but ultimately, weight loss has a price to pay. And so part of it is, are you willing to pay some of these prices? Now, again, we don't ever fast past the point of feeling comfortable, but if maybe we're just, our sleep is a little disrupted, we're a little cold, we have a little diarrhea, right? Are you willing to make the trade or not? And ultimately, n equals one, that is a you decision. And the hair kind of falls under that category from my perspective. You want the weight loss or the perfect hair? Like, which pick, right? We can't always have both, but the hair comes back. And hopefully the weight won't, right? So.
Pat is asking, I'm at 48 hours. I've done 48-hour fasts before, questioning if I should have AIDS. I'm not very hungry after I've had some green tea with salt and took a walk. I don't want to bottom out later tonight. Well, Pat, you're really in a good place right now. What you're describing, the low hunger and feeling steady after having some tea and salt and a walk, is exactly what we'd hope to kind of see around 48 hours. So I don't know, you're, as Heather calls them, fasting friends. They're there if you need them, but you don't have to add anything right now. You're feeling stable, you're not hungry, you're supported with electrolytes. I think you can, that you listen to your body, but if my body was saying that, I would stay the course instead of kind of preemptively adding more fasting aids. But just kind of stay responsive. Some things to watch for. Again, the lightheadedness, the shakiness, the sudden fatigue, or feeling off. And if you feel any of those, try your electrolytes first, your bone broth, your salt, and then give it, 10, 15 minutes and reassess. It's again, our number one rule of fasting is to, if try your electrolytes, and then, you might have to break your fast if you're not feeling well, but you don't have to have a fasting aid if you don't want it and you're feeling well.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. One of the things that I find myself saying a lot is use your judgment, right? Like sometimes because this is a new, people start to do things that make no sense, right? Because it's like I'm following rules. Like you're nauseated and you haven't eaten in 2 days. Like, you need to eat something, right? That is a danger sign. That is a red flag. Kind of debilitating headache, things like that, that are just like, what are you doing, man? Like, obviously, your body is telling you abort mission. Please listen to it. Is across the board. So do not find yourself in a dangerous position because this is the rules. I was following the rules. No, 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 no. Right? Those are guidelines and suggestions. All of us must take agency over our body and make choices based on the information that our body is giving us. I should not have to say this, but I am because I've seen people make ridiculous choices. And I don't want you to go out like that. Be safe always, right? If your body is saying, not tonight, girl, you're done, then you're done. And that's okay. Dr. Fung, in, the session that I did with him, basically said, like, there's no heroes here. There are no medals that we give out. He didn't say that, I'm saying that, but, he basically said, right, if, 2 days is what you got, it's what you got, right? We go into each fast with an intention. We see what our body allows us to do. We do it. And, going back to the perfectionism that Amy talked about earlier, every single one of my most successful clients, right? My clients like Roland that is just setting the world on fire. Every single one of them say verbatim, I didn't do it perfectly. As if, right, there's some perfect way. And everyone else, right? So from my perspective, I'm like, you did everything that was required. You got to goal. How much more perfect can you get? But people think, well, I wanted to do a 5 day. I only did three. I wanted to do a 42 and I had to break at 24 because I was feeling unwell. That's not imperfect. That's perfect. That means you're listening to your body and taking the cues that it's giving you and acting accordingly based on a mature adult who has been with this body for your whole life and who knows when it's not okay, right? So let's all keep that in mind. I wanted to answer this question about using a CGM and whether it's a useful, good info during fasts. And I definitely want to answer that question because I love me a CGM. I would sell them if I could. They won't let me because I'm a healthcare provider. But I am a huge fan of the continuous glucose monitor for the feedback it gives you about diet because so many people come to me, for weight loss help. But, what got us into the mess is generally what our way of eating. And so we need to kind of transform our relationship with food. And that requires us to have a better understanding of how it's affecting us. It's really difficult to know. We can't really see it. And sometimes, I get inflamed, so I can feel it, but some people can't. And so, if you're not getting enough feedback, that doesn't, it isn't necessarily the first place to go, a continuous glucose monitor. But certainly, if you are trying to figure out your way of eating and you're not seeing the results that you want and it feels very frustrating, then that can be a way to see, okay, what do these carbs do to me? And, what quantity is appropriate for me? What food order, like what works for me, so that I can keep that blood glucose at an even keel. I'm not popping insulin. I'm not putting myself into fat storage. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
So, someone is asking, how do you get a coach or do you just pick someone? I'm hoping that one of our moderators could post the link to the coaching page on TFM. But we offer intake sessions, so it's a free 15-minute session you can sign up for, and you can kind of get to know a coach and to see if you're a good fit. You can go on and read our bios and listen to our videos, see kind of what we specialize in, and then you can set up kind of a meet or greet. It's not a sales call. We can kind of talk to you more about how we would work together, and then go from there. So it's very an enjoyable process. I enjoy meeting our members, and our non-members in intake sessions.
Okay, I saw one in here that says I'm carnivore. Is my insulin automatically low? No, unfortunately, I have seen people gain weight with a carnivore diet because of how the quantity of the meat that they're eating. Keep in mind that our body can only absorb a certain amount of protein at any given meal, and so what it is not using for those amino acids, it is going to convert to glucose in a process called gluconeogenesis. So it actually can be insulin spiking when we eat kind of too much protein. And, as Amy was talking about earlier, that frequency still matters, right? Every time we eat, we are, kind of having an insulin response. So we want to be careful about that, right? So, we do not prescribe specific ways of eating. people think that we do. We do not. We very much adhere to N equals one because there is absolutely a very big range, and the range is not just about carbs. It's something that we talk about a lot because of the insulin effect, but there is a psychological component to food, and how certain foods, how we respond to them. And sometimes we step away from foods, even if they're healthy, good, whole foods, because it causes us to have binge behaviors. It causes us to go down a rabbit hole that we wish we didn't. And so figuring that out for yourself and really being present and aware of how food affects you after you eat is a really good idea, so that you know if this is a food that works well for me or not. And then some people get more restrictive than they need to, and they're like, I better not have a carb better not cross my lips, and they're leaving on the table things like berries that would be completely fine for them and be a nice ending to their meal. They're leaving behind some legumes that might work for them as well. And so sometimes I see people overly restricting that don't need to, but I also see people that should be restricting more, which is tough, because they're not getting the results they want. So it really is there is no way to, define for everyone what's appropriate.
I've seen several questions about frequent drinking of herbal teas, sipping green tea throughout the day. Is lemon water, somebody mentioned, could that send up insulin, or should I take a break and just drink water? And I think plain, I think a simple answer is plain herbal tea, green tea, black coffee, lemon or lime juice. These aren't going to have a huge impact, or much of an impact on insulin for most people. The bigger driver of insulin is food, especially carbs, and how often we're eating. Even non-caloric beverages like tea, and as long as there's no artificial sweeteners or sweeteners added. But that being said, if somebody is sipping constantly because they're trying to manage hunger, or is it like anxiety or another emotion, that you're just sort of shifting that, you may have used food for that anxiety or emotion, and now you're using the tea. It can be helpful to kind of pause and check in with yourself. What am I really needing right now? Am I actually thirsty, or am I just needing a moment of support? And maybe you can find that in a non-food way. Maybe it's a couple deep breaths, or a walk outside, or some sunshine. But for most people, sipping tea throughout the day, I think on this reset is completely fine. But also, you can experiment with checking in with yourself and see, what it is that you might really be needing.
I love that so much, Amy. I feel like that's a mic drop moment, and that's exactly, I think a really good place to end, because that is so much the message that I think most of us coaches, certainly, Amy just did, and I will echo that feeling is that, you've been on this planet a long time, friend, right? So you have a lifetime of wisdom baked in. And even those of us who have lost the weight and put it back on, and have been frustrated and feel just a little broken, first of all, we are not. And second of all of that wisdom is you earned it. You earned it with your life experience. And, I really think that trusting that intuition and trusting that, it wasn't for naught, and it can still serve you. And so as you are kind of navigating fasting and changing your diet, and this transformation into someone with that approaches food differently and has a new relationship, which is what, many of my clients come to me for. It's not just the weight loss, it's having a new relationship with food, and finally letting go of the battle of weight loss and making peace with food and our relationship to it. that, there is so much wisdom that can be brought to that. And don't discount all of the things that you learned in the past as if this is a whole new thing. Your body is the constant. It has been there with you the whole time. It has loved you and wanted you to heal the whole time. And it's just a matter of kind of tweaking things enough that you find your way to that relationship that feels more settled and more in tune with your biology. And oftentimes it really just is a matter of extricating, pruning, if you will, the foods that did not serve us, were genetically engineered and manufactured to make us ill and to overeat them. And we get those out. We focus on whole foods. We use a technique like fasting and time restricted eating, and we can make peace with food, reach our goals, and focus on other things in our life besides weight loss. So that is my goal, wish, dream for everyone. That's why I do the work that I do. And I hope every single one of you finds that peace.
Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. And this, if we're going to keep reiterating this, this isn't about doing it perfectly. It's about lowering insulin, rebuilding trust with your body. And so I encourage you to stay steady, stay connected, keep coming back this week, and just keep moving forward one step at a time.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here and make good choices.